Hey guys, so I'm going to talk to you about the elements of the lore real quick. Alright, they're divided into the elements of faith and the elements of knowledge. The elements of faith are air, water, fire, earth, light, darkness, wood, metal, ice, and electric. And the elements of knowledge are as follows: dream, poison, psychic, technology, animal, monster, sound, time, physical, and martial. Some refer to them as the elements of light and darkness. However, this is an error by those who thought them separate and opposite rather than equal, for the world of spirits and guardians was once considered equal with the world of men and their own creations. However, thus some an error out of malice started calling started calling the elements of faith the holy arts, and calling the elements of knowledge the forbidden knowledge. That's because faith was the first, and now and the gifts, and the elements of knowledge were the gift of mankind that were created after the Dark Age to expand on the goddess of creation's world. And she's like the avatar of the creator. Since the creator's real body is kind of in the Earth R, and the goddess of creation is basically their avatar. You see, that they kind of act on the world for. Yeah, they kind of wish to expand on their living art of the world that they kind of suffered a catastrophic loss during the Dark Age. Because because of Skruller, coming in and, messing up the world and, basically making Lilith and, her followers and, kind of vandalizing the world, which, kind of resulted in many of the worlds getting destroyed. Then, basically everything needed to come back together. So, the creator kind of made the goddess of creation and her followers to basically, fix everything, which they were successful in, sealing away the great evils that were Lilith's servants into the box of evils, and basically defeated a whole lot of members of Legion that was, Lilith's organization back then. And, sealed Lilith herself inside the Red Moon. Yeah, of course, that wouldn't last forever, unfortunately. Yeah, the elements were the basis of life that was created by the goddess of creation. Alright. They began mixing and matching them and using the power to force sacred treasures that rule wisdom, law, creativity, and community, and gave birth to those who would become like her in the physical world and give them the power to create after themselves, basically by the power of tulpomancy, which was humanity. And, humanity would go on to basically make tulpas by, make tulpas, as well as basically imagine worlds after their own hearts and desires. And this, pissed off, some of the followers of the goddess of creation who basically betrayed her and, basically deceived humanity into opening the box of evils, which contained the great evils. And, the great evils kind of infected, humanity's wills and psyches. And then, kind of also, infected their creation, and, the Mirrors of Darkness and those that were following her, they basically intended to for it to basically be able to declare, humanity and their creation sinful and clean due to the results of it, so that they could go in and exterminate everything, and basically use it to turn around and basically take over the goddess of creation's, position. But the goddess of creation was like, nah, you're gonna get slain by a spider. And also she sealed, the Mirrors of Darkness inside of a cursed paintbrush. Which would inevitably get picked up by Citaro, but, that's kind of a different thing. Yeah, and unfortunately, the infection caused by the great evils would, cause a schism, which would cause nightmare and delusion to become a thing, and for dreams to become twisted, and reality to be basically full of horrors. Dreams, nightmares, reality, and delusion are basically four different zones. that basically where all the bubbles of realities are basically contained in, Earth Eye. And they're basically accessed by, the master copies of, the world canvases, which, have a whole bunch of shadow copies hidden all over the place, to basically lead to those other worlds, that were basically made by the master copies of, the world canvases. Of course, yeah. Anyway, the Muse of Darkness and her followers basically the reason why they did all that in the first place was because they saw the mixing and matching of elements as, kind of spiritual impurity, since they, were beings of pure elements, and they thought, all this was, basically impure. And they basically thought they were going to get supplanted, because, the goddess creation was basically intending humanity to basically be their children. And also the fact that, humanity, basically due to the power of tulpamancy, had basically, had given the power to make life in, worlds after their own hearts and desires, basically making them sort of like basically making him like the goddess of creation herself, which, royally pissed them off. But was largely a mask for their own, prejudice and all that. and of course, the Muse of Darkness, and the Muse of Darkness's followers would, go on to try and establish it, would go on to basically be oppressors over humanity in the Age of the Gods, until they, pushed this one human lady too far and, curse her into becoming Arachne. And then they would inevitably get slain by her because Arachne was basically a spider with, a very vengeful vendetta against them at that point. But however, the remnant of the gods' forces, and also Lilith, who's basically wanting to get out of the Red Moon, who established, Red Moon, of course. Both of them are kind of still causing trouble to this day, and kind of need to be cleaned up, which is kind of what Dreams was, which is why Indamati and Dreams, which is part of the mission that Dreams and as well as Indamati kind of has to do. At least that's part of their mission, along with, their heroism, of course. Since those kind of problems still cause problems even to this day, yeah. And of course, they're trying to come up with ways to heal the damage caused by all that. The Box of Evils, as well as, Lilith in the Dark Age. Anyway, I'll see you later. Remember to play games in FN, okay? Oh, wow. Remember to fly like bat and shine like the moon, okay? I apologize, Endamine was mostly frozen there, wasn't she? I deeply apologize for that. Remember to fly like bat and shine like the moon, for we are stuff dreams are made of. And, you guys come up with so many cool worlds and, awesome ideas. Some of them are a little terrifying, but that's okay. After all, sometimes people imagine the atomic bomb, sometimes people imagine a light bulb, and there's no real shame in that, I think. Of course, how much it will hurt people, probably should be thought out, a little bit more. Goodbye.